When you are bleeding out in a frozen forest, entirely alone, with shattered bones and no hope of rescue, there is a moment where lying down and closing your eyes makes complete, undeniable sense. Biologically speaking, human beings are incredibly fragile creatures. A sudden drop in core temperature, a massive loss of blood, or a ruptured organ sends immediate shockwaves through our system. Our physiological default in these extreme trauma scenarios is system failure and death. Yet history is full of anomalies, people who survive the impossible. This diagram maps out 4 distinct psychological states that hijack the brain when the body gives out: vengeance, adrenaline, logic, and wisdom. Examining these 4 specific mental states provides a framework for understanding how the mind can temporarily override a body in the process of shutting down. In 1823, an American frontiersman named Hugh Glass found himself lying in the dirt, entirely abandoned by his expedition. He had just been mauled by a grizzly bear, leaving him with a broken leg, exposed ribs, and deep lacerations across his back. To keep his open wounds from developing gangrene, Glass intentionally allowed wild maggots to infest his back and eat his rotting, dying flesh. Unable to walk, he dragged his broken body across the hostile wilderness, inching his way through roughly 200 miles of terrain. Glass was propelled by unfiltered spite, his brain locked onto a burning obsession to track down the men who left him to die, using vengeance as a raw fuel source to ignore his physical agony. 14 years earlier, in 1809, another frontiersman named John Colter was captured by hundreds of Blackfeet warriors. After watching his hunting partner get hacked to pieces, Colter was stripped entirely naked, robbed of his gear, and told to run. He was the prey in a twisted hunt. Sprinting 6 miles across jagged rocks with bare feet, his lungs burned so intensely that blood poured from his nose. Exhausted and about to be caught, he abruptly spun around, startled his pursuer into snapping his own spear, and then used that broken shaft to kill the warrior. Snatching the dead man's blanket, Colter dove into an icy river and swam inside a beaver lodge. He hid there for hours, treading freezing water with his face pressed into a tiny pocket of air, while his hunters searched directly above his head. When night fell, he slipped downstream. Over the next 11 days, wearing nothing but that stolen blanket, he forced his bleeding body across 300 miles of mountainous terrain, surviving entirely on roots and berries until he stumbled into a trading fort. Colter's survival was the result of a sustained spike of primal adrenaline. This chemical response effectively severed his brain's communication with his pain receptors, prioritizing immediate evasion over the catastrophic damage happening to his muscles and skin. By April 1961, a 26-year-old Soviet surgeon named Leonid Rogozov was stationed in Antarctica. One morning, a sharp, stabbing pain localized in his lower right abdomen. He quickly diagnosed himself with acute appendicitis. Severe blizzards grounded all rescue aircraft. The nearest qualified doctor was over 1,000 miles away, and without immediate intervention, his appendix was going to burst within 24 hours. Rogozov had 3 colleagues hold tools and a mirror, injected himself with a local anesthetic, and sliced into his own abdomen. Blood coated his hands, forcing him to work mostly by touch. He accidentally cut his large intestine, sewed it back up, and fought off severe vertigo by taking 30-second breaks every 4 minutes to avoid blacking out. After 2 agonizing hours, he successfully found and removed the rotting appendix. Within 2 weeks, he was back to his normal duties, a feat that earned him the Order of the Red Banner of Labor from the Soviet government. When faced with mortal terror, Rogozov relied on clinical detachment. He suppressed the panic of cutting into his own flesh by retreating into cold, step-by-step rational logic, viewing his own body as a mechanical problem to be solved. On Christmas Eve, 1971, Lanza Flight 508 flew directly into a severe thunderstorm over Peru. The aircraft tore apart in midair, violently ejecting 17-year-old Juliane into the open sky and sending her plummeting thousands of feet. The dense jungle canopy and her seat broke her fall, leaving her as the sole survivor. But she woke up with a brutal concussion, a broken collarbone, deep gashes and practically blind without her glasses in the middle of the Amazon rainforest. Having lived with zoologist parents, she remembered a strict rule her father taught her. If you are lost in the jungle, find water and follow it downstream, because rivers eventually lead to people. For 10 days, she hobbled through the brutal environment, relying entirely on this directive. When the open gash on her arm became infested with inch-long botfly maggots, she recalled another trick of her father's. Finding an abandoned boat, she sucked raw gasoline out of its tank and spit it directly into her own wound, enduring the excruciating pain to extract 30 maggots from her flesh. Juliane's survival was guided by taught wisdom. By anchoring her mind to strict routines and remembered rules, she built a psychological life raft that kept her from slipping into fatal despair. Looking at this matrix showing Glass, Colter, Rogozov, and Kopke, we see a clear pattern. None of these historical figures possessed superhuman biology. Instead, they possessed minds capable of synthesizing the exact psychological drug required for their specific nightmare. The human brain has a terrifying capacity to shut down our natural aversions. When properly motivated, it can force a person to slice open their own abdomen, pour raw fuel into an open wound, or run for miles on shattered bones. When the physical body is utterly broken and biology fails, it is the mind alone that makes the final decision on whether you live or die.